Oh, how funny. Hey, everybody. Welcome to MomSimply. So this is the first time we're doing a series, and the whole series is on which school is right for you. And I'm so blessed because I feel very lucky to have one of my old teacher friends who's from Corning for several years and has students who are in the public school system too, who's going to kind of unpack for us why public schools are for her family, why she chose public school, and how that enrollment process was. So, Miss Lindsay, can you introduce yourself, my friend?
Hi, I'm Lindsay Larson. I teach Spanish at the 7th grade level here in Corning. I have an almost 7th grader who's just wrapping up his 6th grade year. And I have 2 almost 3-year-old twins. One of them is going to be doing a preschool program through early intervention starting this fall. So the public school system has been a very interesting ride for us. It started with Tyler back in Elmira when he was about 3. And we've done his journey now that he's almost 12. And now we're starting yet another journey with our twins in a different district. So it's been an interesting road. And I hope I can help a bunch of you out and answer any questions you may have.
So I think with public schools, I think a lot of parents have this question mark because especially when our administration changed and when our director of education was elected, and a lot of people had a bad taste in their mouth as where education is going. And there's a new curriculum roll up with Common Core, and there's a lot of discussions about English and math and their students struggling. So we'll take the teacher part of you out of this for a second and just that and how that does look. You're now almost 7th grader with, I can't believe taters.
I know. He's so tall too. It's crazy. I'm like, where did this big boy come from? It was scary. And I mean, I remember going through that entire journey with Tyler, starting to do that adjustment to Common Core when he was in like 1st grade. And it was scary as a parent because you're sitting there and you're going, okay, they're giving me all of these websites and resources to look at as to, okay, so this is how you're going to teach your kid how to do Common Core at home. And it's like, okay, so wait a minute, where's that teacher component? What exactly is happening? How does this all shake out?
Right.
You know, are we just taking a bowl of spaghetti and throwing it to the wall and seeing what sticks? Like, where's the investment? Where is the accountability piece? Where does all of this lie? It was really tough as a parent to go through that journey. I found that honestly, the biggest thing that I needed to keep in mind with that whole big adjustment was everybody is learning. Right. The teachers are learning. The administrators are learning. We're learning as parents. Our kids are all learning. It's a different mindset. It's a different approach to problems. Everything is changing. And sometimes change is hard, but sometimes change is really good. So you can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater and be like, nope, that's not going to work for me. Let's give it a shot and see how it goes. So at that time, it was the same year, Amanda, that you and I were still at Corning Painted Post. It was that god awful year. And it was that next year where I went, do I want to keep my child in public schools? Because now I have to. I did, you know, because here I am, I'm living in a district that's not the district I teach in. And I'm sorry, I praise my district like crazy. But I was living in a different district and I wasn't particularly thrilled with the student to teacher ratio. I was really nervous about the budget cuts and the way that it affected them because it affected us in Corning that way. How is it going to affect this district that had fewer resources and more issues to face? And I sat there and I thought about it and I went, okay, so where could I put him for a private school? So I did my homework and I did a little digging, and it turned out at that point, I was like, they still have to do Common Core.
Really?
That at that point, everything was across the board. Everybody was trying it. Now, mind you, this was 2011, 2012.
Right.
You know, I mean, this was a long time ago. And then I was actually offered a job at one of the private schools. And I was like, oh, cool, this is going to be great. But then I sat there and I went and I talked to them about curriculum, and they didn't really seem to have the answers that I was looking for as that parent who is an educator. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky. I was called back and I ended up getting the opportunity to take my child in district with me. So Tyler ended up coming into Corning with me, even though we lived in a different district, and he got to go to the public schools there.
That's great.
It made a big difference for me personally because his staff to student ratio is different and everything else. His before and after school care, there were so many layers to it that really worked out for us and where we were at that point in our lives, that I could see where that could be something that maybe wouldn't work out for other folks. You know, there is no right or wrong answer. There isn't.
Well, and I think what's nice, I'm going to try something too, Lindsay, because a lot of people were saying they hear the feedback too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
See if you can mute or lower your volume when I do like a chat thing.
All right, is that better?
We'll see if that helps something. So I think with a lot of parents are in your boat too, that they have this question of, I don't like Common Core. I can't change curriculum. What are my options? I think what you've kind of shared is do first your research. Look at the private school and really ask questions about curriculum. So specifically, who did you ask?
So when I was looking at it, a lot of the up and coming charter schools, private schools, and things like that were not necessarily focusing on the New York State stuff the way that I had been taught to focus on it as an educator. Now, I liked that some of them had holistic approaches, because to me that's very important, which is why I work in the district I work in.
What is holistic?
So holistic is looking at the entire learner. It's not just can they do math, can they do science, how do they do on these tests? It's how are they developing character-wise? Are they getting a chance to express themselves with art? Are they getting music? Are they getting all of these other different experiences that make them better citizens and better members of our society? So to me, that was really important because I, as a parent, have a big role in that, but I'd like to think that a school does too.
Right.
So for me, that was something that I needed to find somewhere that had buy-in on that end of things too. But at the same time, there were some that I found the equilibrium wasn't quite there, where it was more focused on the character education and everything else, and not so much on the curricular stuff. So it's been interesting, and especially living in this area as an educator and as a parent, like even at the middle school level, we have a great charter school here. I don't want to knock the charter school, but they have a focus on their STEM academy, which is great. Mm-hmm. Our middle school is a public school. We do International Baccalaureate. We do a middle years program where we focus on the holistic learner as well. So we do the FOSS modules just like New York State does. We do the Common Core things just like New York State does. But what we do is we tweak them and adjust them so that they're focusing on these learner profile characteristics, like making them good communicators and problem solvers and risk takers, and teaching them how to be reflective on their performance and how they did and what they could do differently next time. And, all of these things that we're trying to instill in our kids are still tied in with that.
Have you seen growth or progress with having a student? Because Tyler's in middle school, there's character and personality. That's all developing. That's starting out. What have you seen as positives in your son?
Honestly, my kid is more reflective than I ever would have anticipated. So a brief backstory on my Thai guy. He's a very unique kiddo. When he was 3, we did early interventions, and that's how he ended up in the public school system to begin with. When he was 3, he went to a preschool where he could have his physical therapy and everything right at school. So for us, that worked, but he wasn't really quite blossoming the way that I had anticipated. So for him, all I could see at that point was a lot of roadblocks, a lot of things that he would have to overcome. And now that he's in this middle school age and he's been in a public school system that has nurtured all of those different reflective pieces and the problem solving and everything else. He's become a problem solver and an incredible kid who sits there and looks back on what he did and how he might be able to do it better. And he's become proactive too. So it's been really cool to watch, especially this 6th grade year where it's been a whole new building, a whole new schedule and everything else. And it started out really rocky, but now he's learning to break bigger tasks into more manageable tasks and reflect on what he could have done differently to make everything easier. And he's blossoming. It's just amazing to see.
And I think what's so great and what's going to be helpful for parents too, Lindsay, is that when you have a student who has a need, public schools really step up and really help give the resources to make sure your child is going to thrive and have the best chance possible, which you won't have at, I mean, I don't know what charter schools are given or what private schools, but public education-wise, it's funded, it's federally funded, and you're going to be given all of the resources possible.
That's huge. And a shining example of that right now is my older twin by a whole honking 6 minutes. My Bruce, we're doing early intervention with him. So his pediatrician recommended that we had him evaluated when he was 2. And he was very, very low for speech, gross motor skills, fine motor skills, was showing a lot of sensory processing issues. So we started with early intervention through the county to get him speech twice a week and occupational therapy once a week. And he's been growing and he's been doing well, but it came to the point where it went, okay, he's now going to be hitting 3. Do we want to try getting him into a preschool half day where all of those early interventions will take place at school among his peers and everything else? So he went in to the board building. My dad took him. You can imagine Papa Bear sitting there and taking little Boo Man in, right?
I love it.
And they did his evaluation and they decided that it would be best for him if he did a half day early intervention based preschool. So they're going to pick him up right at daycare at 8:30 in the morning. They're going to take him in. He's going to get speech 4 times a week instead of twice. Occupational therapy twice a week instead of once. And then they'll bring him back to daycare at 11:30. And the director of early childhood education told me, she said, if you want, we can have him evaluated. We can go ahead and send him up to Kirsch and everything else. It's a long waiting list. She said, but no matter what, she says, we don't feel the need to necessarily put a label on your child. She goes, your Bruce is your Bruce. He's a kid. He's awesome. He's a very sweet boy who has some delays. And we are going to do everything we can as a district with all of the resources we have to give him the help that he needs. And that to me was
that sounds like
invaluable.
A mom talking to another mom. That you're not just throwing labels on kids and just trying to systematically that, oh, your child fits in, is a type A child. This is the route we do for type A kids. But and then I don't know if that's because the district's looking holistically at a student.
I don't know. It was very different. So it was our IFSP, which is what we do as IEPs for kids before they turn 5. So before they enter kindergarten, it's an individualized family services plan. Oh my gosh, that's terrible, isn't it?
Here, I put my mic back in so it wouldn't. I don't know if that would help.
Sorry, Muffin.
You're okay.
So the whole thing is I had done one before with Tyler in a different public school, and Tyler was just borderline. So we didn't quite get the same supports, but they still got him into a great pre-K that had him well prepared when he went to kindergarten, to the point where we actually had him declassified by the time he hit kindergarten because he had those extra supports built into his school day.
So I think that's going to help a ton of parents. If you're on the fence about public school, for example, if your student is showing any type of delay or you're not that they're labeled, but you're wondering what extra resources help. Public schools undoubtedly will be so great in unpacking and helping your child thrive thrive in
and
the
they
public
work
school
beautifully.
system.
Yes. And they work beautifully with your pediatrician as well, because they communicate back and forth with each other, and they take what you have to say as a parent at full value too. I mean, the amount of surveys and, interviews that my husband and I have faced for Bruce. I mean, it's just, they really want to know everything they can before, they sit there and just assume.
Do
it's not just let's slap a label.
I know with our pediatric office, they have an online portal.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that teachers then will have access to? Or is it just more phone calls and emails?
I think that you could possibly end up doing that if you were to sign like a release of information. It's tough because I don't know enough about HIPAA laws. I could ask my mom and find out. My mother's the nurse practitioner for one of the districts. So she knows a lot about the HIPAA laws and what, breaches that patient, confidentiality. But then there's also that teacher-student confidentiality and what sort of releases would need to be signed to make that work so that they could become a collaborative team instead of it just being communicating back and forth with you as the parent, as if you don't have enough on your plate. Right. Taking it and trying to sit there and be the go-between. And it's like playing a game of telephone, you don't know if you're getting the right message across.
Well, and I think so. I have a neighbor that I tutor. She's on the spectrum. She's diagnosed autistic and high functioning. And I know for teachers who aren't teachers, having them unpack IEPs independently and come into parent conferences well equipped with knowledge and verbiage to be able to know that Maddie's getting help. Is a struggle for them.
Yeah, it's a lot. It is. It's a lot. It's very overwhelming. Now, here in Steuben County with Bruce, we had a caseworker who did a beautiful job of doing that. Now, thankfully, I speak the education lingo. I've got it all covered because I go through umpteen million IEPs, but for parents who don't have that, there are caseworkers who take on your child's case and they help you unpack that. And it's not just this is what they're saying. Why can't you get this? It's so this is what they're seeing. What do you see? And is there something you'd like to add? Is there something you feel isn't right? It's very collaborative instead of combative. And I feel like that's something that's huge. Because it's a tough thing to deal with, sitting there and acknowledging that maybe your child needs more than you really want to necessarily admit sometimes. So to have someone in your corner it's an incredible tool.
And I think that's it. I think there's that overwhelming nervousness and you have getting your own ego out of the way. I think all parents, we need to check our own ego at the door and be like, this has nothing to do with me. This has nothing to do with how well my husband and I did with our kids as babies. All kids are different. And the school system is very specific about measuring kids. And if your kid doesn't fit into that mold, here's help so that they can do well. And they can be the best students.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily trying to get your kid to fit into the mold. It's trying to give your kid the tools to be successful as their own person in a world that works the way that it does.
So brilliantly said, Lindsay. So I'm going to, because my feedback's so bad, this is probably like what I'll do, everyone, is I'm going to edit our video. So I'll have words and then Lindsay thrown up there so you can kind of hear all of your responses on public schools. And if you have questions and you're thinking about public school, please feel free to add that. And before I head off real quick, I want to talk about the enrollment process with your two pre-K students. So what does your district offer in terms of preschools based on age?
So preschools based on age in our district, it's right now they're working on getting it down to 3 and up. 3 and up is a lottery right now. It's guaranteed at 4. Our district's still adjusting to a lot of it. It's a really big district. It takes up a lot of space. Just think of our bus ride,
A lot of districts
big district.
Lottery.
Yeah. So for us, though, the thing that, I mean, and granted, I'm speaking from that early intervention standpoint, was it put him as a top priority on the list. And then it went based on birthday. And with Bruce's birthday falling the way it did, he was a shoe-in. Now, Kurt, my other twin, he's showing a couple of delays, but nothing huge. But Laura, our director of early childhood education, when I met with her about Bruce to do our IFSP, she said, well, what about Kurt? And I said, well, he's got some delays, but I can't really tell how much of it's a twin thing, because that's a whole other box that needs to be unpacked, and how much of it is a delay. So she said, well, bring him in this summer. She said, get a hold of me. She says, I will let you know what week I'm available to do an evaluation on him too. And if you feel that he would benefit as well, then we'll get him right in. So for us in our district, everybody's just been super supportive. It hasn't been fighting for a spot. It hasn't been the way that it is in other districts. So on that part, I'm really blessed. I can tell you that I have a girlfriend who her family lives in another district. Her kids go to a different district. It's a lottery system there as well. So that was how it was in Elmira with Tyler too.
That's so
that seems to be kind of the norm. But if you do have a kid who needs those early interventions, a lot of times they find ways to make sure that they can give you the support that they need, because that's what districts do. That's what we are in education for, is to do the best we can for all of our students.
Well, I would love to have you on in the future about twin stuff.
Oh gosh, that's a whole other box, girl.
I know. I think there's so many parents who could be like, oh yes, finally I get this. Or what do I do about this behavior? Because it's like this telepathic or in a totally different level of I mean, you know it. You're in it every day.
It's a war zone, but it's a great war zone. It's a beautiful mess. It's amazing. I would be happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Muffin.
Thank you, darling.
And what else, if you're open to this, Lindsay, if anyone is public ed questions, can I give them your name?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to help in any way I can.
Well, get through Friday and have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Enjoy your night, honey.
Oh, thank you.